Seeing her husband off on a business trip, the wife noticed the taxi driver giving her a strange look and whispering, "He's deceiving you. Follow us." Deciding to take his advice, she followed and soon saw the taxi turn not toward the airport, but to a countryside house. And when she saw who got out of the car, she gasped. San Martin Square was bathed in the golden rays of the setting sun. An old gypsy woman laid out her worn tarot cards on a small table covered with an embroidered cloth. Her dark eyes, framed by fine wrinkles, studied the elegant woman sitting across from her with keen attention. Mercedes Herrera nervously tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear, glancing at her watch. 45 years old, impeccably made up, dressed in an expensive coat, she clearly wasn't a regular client of street fortune-tellers. Yet something had drawn her here that evening, something had made her stop at that shabby little table. "I must admit, I don't really believe in this," Mercedes confessed awkwardly, looking at the cards. "A friend recommended you, said you predict very accurately." The gypsy silently shuffled the cards with her knotted fingers, adorned with numerous rings. Her gaze was piercing, like an autumn wind, as if she could see right through a person. "Belief is not a requirement, my dear," she said in a hoarse voice with a slight accent. "The truth will find its way to the heart. Focus on what troubles you." Mercedes closed her eyes. Worrying thoughts swirled in her mind: Julio's coldness, his strange absences, Mia with her new boyfriend and rebellious behavior, the feeling that life was slipping through her fingers like sand. The old woman began laying out the cards. The first, the second, the third, and suddenly her hand froze. "The Tower," the gypsy whispered, her voice carrying ominous undertones. "What does it mean?" Mercedes felt a chill run down her spine. The gypsy woman remained silent for a long moment, studying the card. Then she lifted her gaze to the woman. "Your life is an illusion, my dear. Soon, everything you've believed in for so many years will collapse. Someone close to you is chasing a false light." She paused. "But true love is very near. And you are stronger than you think." Mercedes laughed nervously. "Sorry, but that sounds like something out of a cheap horror novel. My life is quite fine, thank you." The old woman shrugged and gathered the cards. "Time will tell, Senora. Time always reveals the truth." Mercedes paid and hurried away from the square, but the gypsy's words haunted her the entire way home. The Herrera family's small house was located in a prestigious part of the city, surrounded by a well-kept rose garden. White walls, a red-tiled roof, wrought iron balconies, everything exuded stability. But stability was only a facade. Mercedes stood by the kitchen window, looking out into the garden. A tense silence filled the house. Julio had left for yet another business trip 3 days ago, and Mia hadn't come home again. "Where is that girl?" she whispered, dialing her daughter's number for the 100th time. "The subscriber is temporarily unavailable," the automated voice responded mechanically. Mercedes sat down at the kitchen table and glanced at an old photograph on the shelf. It showed her, Julio, and little Mia at the beach. Mia had been 7 then, laughing as she hugged her parents. Where had those times gone, when they were a happy family? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. On the doorstep stood Leo Vasquez, a tall young man with kind brown eyes and a shy smile. In his hands, he held a stack of notebooks and textbooks. "Good afternoon, Senora Mercedes," he greeted her. Yesterday, Mia was in such a hurry that she forgot her notes and psychology textbooks at the library. "The exam is coming up, so I thought she might need them." Looking into his kind eyes, Mercedes suddenly burst into tears. "Mia didn't come home again," she whispered. "She's not answering her phone. I don't know what to do. She's with Juan. They were dancing at a club all night. I saw it in friends' stories." Mercedes's legs felt like jelly. She managed to reach a chair and sank heavily into it. "Why is she doing this to me?" Leo stepped into the room and sat down on the chair next to her. She's just in love with him. I don't know what she sees in him, though. He's not a good person. But Mia doesn't see it. She thinks he's romantic and mysterious. Oh, Leo. Mia won't listen to me. Maybe you could talk to her? You've been friends since childhood. Leo turned pale. Senora, she barely talks to me anymore because of Juan. She thinks I'm jealous, and that's why I say bad things about him. Mercedes sighed. That's so like Mia. She's become such a rebel. She won't let anyone get close. After Leo left, Mercedes sat in silence for a long time, reflecting on their conversation. Outside, it was growing dark, and Mia still hadn't come home. What should I do? Should I tell Julio? But he's so busy. Mercedes thought bitterly. Just then, the phone rang. Julio's number lit up on the screen. Mercedes hurried to answer. Hello, darling, his voice sounded cheerful. How are things? Everything's fine, Mercedes replied. She realized now wasn't the time to talk about problems. Great. The project is moving faster than we expected. Everything's going according to plan. I'm really pleased. Suddenly, a child's voice sounded in the background. Daddy. Are you coming? Let's play. Julio, who was that? Mercedes asked, stunned. A brief pause. That's the TV. I'm watching a movie. Her husband's explanation sounded unconvincing, but Mercedes was too tired to press further. At night, Mercedes couldn't sleep. She lay in the empty bed, flipping through the family photo album. There was their wedding, how young, beautiful, and full of hope they were. Julio in a white suit, she in her grandmother's lace dress. How sincerely he had looked into her eyes as he spoke his vows. How much he had loved her. And there was Mia in the hospital, tiny, wrinkled, but so precious. Julio had cried with joy, holding their daughter in his arms. She's going to be the most beautiful girl in the world, he had whispered then. Here was Mia taking her first steps, and next to her, little Leo, reaching out his hands to her. Even then, he had been her protector. Mercedes remembered how his mother, Concepcion, used to joke, one day our children will get married, you'll see. The memories flowed like a river. Family trips to the seaside, birthdays, Mia's first day at school. Julio had been a devoted father, carrying Mia in his arms, reading bedtime stories, teaching her how to ride a bike. When had everything started to change? Mercedes tried to remember. Probably about 10 years ago. Julio had started working more, his business trips became more frequent. He explained it with new projects, ambitious plans. Mercedes believed every word, after all, his architecture firm really was thriving. But gradually, the distance between them grew. Julio became distracted, often taking phone calls and stepping into another room. And when Mercedes asked who had called, he would wave her off, work, darling, just work. Mia also started to drift away from the family. In her teenage years, it had seemed normal, children grow up, seek independence. But Juan's appearance 6 months ago changed their daughter beyond recognition. Mercedes remembered that day well. Mia came home beaming, her eyes shining. Mom, I think I'm in love, she announced. He's amazing. Smart, handsome, mysterious. What's his name? Mercedes asked. Juan Morales. He's older than me, studying law. But when Mercedes met this Juan, something about his look made her uneasy, too confident, almost predatory. He was handsome, but with a dangerous kind of beauty, the kind that draws in naive young girls. And Leo, poor Leo watched as the girl of his dreams, his childhood friend, fell for someone else. Mercedes had seen the pain in his eyes when Mia spoke about Juan. But he stayed silent, not wanting to be selfish. After all, you can't command the heart. The phone rang. Mercedes glanced at the clock, 1:30 in the morning. Mia's number lit up on the screen. Mia? Thank God. Where are you? Concern broke through in her voice. Mom, everything's fine, her daughter's voice sounded strange. I'm at Juan's. I'm staying the night. Mia, you know I don't approve. Mom, don't start. I'm an adult. I can decide for myself where and with whom to be. Sweetheart, I really think this young man is a bad influence on you. You've changed. A sharp laugh came from the other end of the line. Yes, I've changed. I've started living a real life, not wasting away in that boring house. Juan showed me a world you couldn't even imagine. It's what I deserve, what truly suits me. Mia. That's enough, Mom. We'll talk tomorrow. Don't wait up for me. Bye. The line went dead. Mercedes slowly lowered the phone. A growing sense of foreboding tightened in her chest. Something was wrong. And there was nothing she could do about it. Outside, a light rain began to fall, and the droplets on the window streamed down like tears. Mia showed up only by Monday evening, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, but with a feverish gleam in her gaze. Where have you been? Mercedes asked, trying to keep her tone calm. With Juan, Mia answered shortly, heading to her room. Mia, wait. We need to talk. Her daughter stopped but didn't turn around. About what? About Juan. About how much you've changed. I don't care what you think. Mia exploded, turning sharply. You don't understand anything about my life. Juan is the only one who truly loves me. Mercedes watched her daughter carefully. Mia's beautiful face was twisted in anger, and there was a kind of feverish energy in her eyes. She looked like someone under the influence of drugs. Mia, are you using something? What? Mia's eyes widened. How dare you? I'm not a drug addict. Then what's happening to you? You don't sleep, you don't eat, you're constantly on edge. I'm living. Mia screamed. For the first time in my life. With that, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Mercedes stood in the hallway, feeling an icy chill spread inside her. The following days passed in anxious waiting. Mia barely came home, and when she did, she would lock herself in her room right away. Mercedes tried to reach her, but Mia responded curtly or not at all. On Wednesday evening, Julio returned. Mercedes heard the sound of keys in the lock and felt a wave of relief. Finally, there would be an ally in the house, someone to help her deal with Mia. Julio, she ran into the hallway and hugged her husband. I missed you so much. But his embrace was cold, formal. Julio quickly freed himself from her arms and set his suitcase against the wall. Hello, darling, he said without even kissing her. Sorry, I'm very tired. Mercedes watched him closely. Julio did look tired, but it wasn't physical exhaustion, it was something else. A detachment, as if he were here in body but his mind was somewhere far away. How was the business trip? She asked, following him into the living room. Fine, Julio muttered, sinking into an armchair and pulling out his phone. A lot of work. But you said the project was going really well, even better than planned. Julio froze for a second, then glanced at her distractedly. Huh? Oh, yes, the project's good. Just a lot of small things, details. He turned back to his phone. Sorry, darling, I need to check on something for work. Mercedes sat across from him, watching as he typed messages intently. In the past, when he returned from business trips, he would always tell her everything about the clients, the challenges, how much he missed home. Now he sat there like a stranger. Julio, we're having problems with Mia, she began. He responded without looking up. She's gotten involved with some guy, Juan. I'm afraid he's pulling her into trouble. Handle it, Julio said indifferently. You're the psychologist. His indifference hit her hard. Before, any problem with Mia would make him drop everything. He would spend hours discussing with Mercedes the best way to help their daughter, worrying if Mia was upset. Julio, look at me, she asked. Reluctantly, he lifted his eyes from the phone. There was no warmth in them, only weary patience. "What's wrong?" Mercedes asked. "You seem different." "Nothing's wrong," he waved her off. "I'm just tired. Work wears me out. Sorry if I seem distracted." There was something false in his words. Mercedes couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, but her intuition, which had never failed her, was now screaming that her husband was lying. "Maybe we could have dinner together," she suggested. "Thanks, but I'm not hungry," Julio said, standing up. "I'll take a shower and go to bed early." He headed upstairs, leaving Mercedes alone in the living room. She sat in the silence, feeling the anxiety growing inside her. What was happening to her family? The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt cold and empty. Mercedes eventually made her way up to the bedroom. Julio was already in bed, turned toward the wall. She lay down quietly beside him, trying not to disturb him, but she knew he wasn't asleep. His breathing was uneven. "Julio," she whispered in the darkness, "do you still love me?" A long pause followed. So long that Mercedes's heart began to pound with fear. "Of course I love you," he said at last, but his voice sounded mechanical. "Good night, darling." The tears came on their own, silent, bitter tears of a woman who feels her world falling apart. She cried in the darkness, pressing her mouth against the pillows so as not to wake her husband. Outside, the night wind howled, and it seemed to mourn with her, mourning the happiness that had so quickly and silently slipped from her grasp. Only 5 days had passed, and Julio was already packing his suitcase for another business trip. Mercedes stood in the doorway of the bedroom, watching as he methodically folded his shirts. "Again?" she asked, trying to keep her voice indifferent. "Yes, I need to work out a few details on the project," Julio replied without looking up. "For about 2 weeks." 2 weeks? But you said everything was almost done." "Mercedes, you don't understand the specifics of this job," he cut her off. "In architecture, there are no small details. One mistake can cost millions." She remained silent, but something inside her tightened. Julio had become even colder and more distant. Even now, preparing to leave, he hadn't offered to let her see him off like he used to. "I'll call a taxi," he said, closing the suitcase. "Julio." Mercedes approached him. "I feel like we're growing apart. Maybe we should talk?" He finally looked at her, and for a moment there was something like guilt in his eyes. "After the trip, okay? Right now my head is full of work." The taxi arrived right on time. Mercedes still went out to see her husband off. Some inner force compelled her. The driver was an older man, around 60, with a serious face and attentive dark eyes. "Allow me," the driver said, helping Julio load the suitcase. "I forgot something," Julio suddenly remembered and went back into the house. Mercedes was about to follow him when the driver lowered the window and called to her. "Señora." She walked up to the car. The driver looked at her intently, then quickly glanced at the house. "Señora," the driver said quietly but distinctly, "he's deceiving you. Follow us." Mercedes felt the blood freeze in her veins. "What did you say?" But the driver was already rolling up the window. Julio returned and got into the back seat. He didn't even kiss Mercedes goodbye, he just gave her a short wave. The car pulled away. Mercedes stood in the road, trying to process what she'd just heard. "He's deceiving you." What could that mean? A random remark from a crazy man, or... Without thinking about the consequences, she rushed to her car. The taxi wasn't going fast, and Mercedes managed to keep her distance without drawing attention. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst from her chest. At first, the car headed toward the airport, and Mercedes felt a wave of relief. Maybe the driver really was out of his mind. But then the taxi suddenly veered off the main road and started toward an upscale suburban neighborhood. What's going on? Mercedes thought frantically as she continued to follow them. The taxi stopped in front of a beautiful 2-story house with a well-kept garden. Mercedes parked around the corner and watched as Julio got out of the car, pulled out his suitcase, and paid the driver. Then the door of the house swung open. Two children, a boy around 8 and a girl around 6, ran out, shouting joyfully, "Daddy! Daddy!" They threw themselves into Julio's arms, and he scooped them up, spinning around and laughing. Mercedes felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Daddy?" But that wasn't all. A young woman appeared in the doorway, a beautiful blonde in her early 30s, wearing a simple house dress. She walked over to Julio, and after setting the children down, he kissed her. Not on the cheek, like an acquaintance, but on the lips, the kiss of a man in love. Mercedes sat in her car, unable to believe her eyes. Julio looked happy, truly happy, in a way she hadn't seen in many years. He looked like a man who was home. The family disappeared inside, leaving Mercedes alone with her thoughts. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of life together. And all this time, he had another family? Another wife? Other children? Was that even possible? She remembered the child's voice she had heard during their last phone call. The television, Julio had lied. Tears began to flow, bitter, burning tears. Mercedes cried, clutching the steering wheel, feeling everything inside her fall apart. The tower, the one the gypsy had spoken of, had collapsed. How many years had he been deceiving her? 10? Maybe from the very beginning? Had their marriage been nothing but a cover, while his real life happened here, in this house, with this woman and these children? But why? Just then, her phone rang. It was Leo. "Senora Mercedes," his voice was trembling with urgency, "I need to see you right away. It's about Mia. She's in trouble." Mercedes wiped her tears with shaking hands. "Leo, not now." "Aunt Mercedes, it's serious," he interrupted her. "Mia's in jail." The world flipped over again. Mercedes couldn't believe this was really happening. "Where are you?" she asked, feeling her voice about to crack into a scream. "I'm at your house." "I'm coming," Mercedes said, and hung up. She took one last look at the house where her husband's second family lived, started the car, and drove away. Mercedes barely had time to pull up to her house when she saw Leo pacing nervously by the gate. His face was pale with worry. "Senora Mercedes," he ran up to the car. "Thank God. Let's go." "What exactly happened?" she asked, trying to focus on her daughter's problems and push aside what she had seen half an hour earlier. "Mia was arrested an hour ago," Leo said quickly, getting into the car. "Carlos, Juan's younger brother, came running to me in tears. He said that this morning, he, Juan, and Mia stole an expensive Lexus parked near the shopping mall. But when the police showed up, Juan jumped out of the car and ran, leaving Mia behind the wheel." Mercedes felt a chill run down her spine. "My God. Where's Juan now?" "Disappeared. Carlos says he has an escape plan for situations like this." Leo was nervously fidgeting with his seatbelt. "Mia's there alone, at the police station." "We'll be there soon," Mercedes replied shortly, turning the car around. The police station on Bolivar Street buzzed like a hive. Mercedes and Leo approached the duty sergeant. "We're here about Mia Herrera," Mercedes said. "I'm her mother." The sergeant checked the computer. "Detective Castro is handling the case." "I'll call him now." Detective Castro turned out to be a middle-aged man with tired eyes and graying temples. He invited them into his office and pulled out the reports. "Senora Herrera, the situation is serious," he began without preamble. "Your daughter was caught behind the wheel of a stolen Lexus LX 570 worth about $100,000. But she couldn't have." Mercedes began. "Let me explain everything step by step," the detective interrupted. "At 10 in the morning, we received a report of a car theft from the parking lot of the Las Americas shopping center. The owner, businessman Alberto Iglesias, came out of the gym and found his car was gone." The detective flipped through some documents. Half an hour later, a patrol spotted the stolen vehicle on the North Highway. When they tried to stop it, The driver attempted to flee but was eventually caught. And then? Leo asked. Your daughter was behind the wheel. Alone. She was extremely agitated, crying, repeating something about being abandoned, Rodriguez said, looking at Mercedes. Senora, your daughter confessed to the theft. What? Mercedes shot up from her chair. That's impossible. Unfortunately, it's true. She gave a detailed statement about how she planned the crime. Detective, Leo interjected, what about Juan Morales? He was involved too. Rodriguez studied the young man carefully. And how do you know that? His younger brother told me. Juan ran off when the police showed up. Interesting, the detective said, making a note in his notebook. We'll definitely find this Juan and question him. But for now, all we have is your daughter and her confession. Can I see her? Mercedes asked. Of course. But first, you need to understand, she's facing prison time. Stealing a luxury vehicle is a serious crime. The words hit like a hammer. Mercedes felt dizzy. To lose both her husband and her daughter in one day. Senora Mercedes, Leo said, taking her hand, we'll find a way to help Mia. The holding cell was located in the basement of the station. When they went down, Mercedes saw her daughter through the bars. Mia was sitting on a narrow cot, hugging her knees. Her face was swollen from crying, and her hair was disheveled. When she saw her mother, she jumped up and rushed to the bars. Mom, she sobbed. Mom, forgive me. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. Juan said it would be fun. Forgive me. Mercedes reached through the bars to embrace her daughter. Shoo, sweetheart, shoo. Tell me everything from the beginning. Juan said he needed money for his mother's surgery. He said that businessman had 20 cars like that one, and I believed him. He said we'd get away easily, that no one would catch us. And that his mother would get better. And then what happened? We were driving around town, and suddenly the police showed up. Mia cried even harder. Juan shouted, floor it, and then he jumped out of the car while it was moving. He just left me. Leo stepped closer to the bars. Mia, what happened next? I panicked and stepped on the gas, the girl confessed. I thought maybe I could get away, ditch the car later. But the police caught me. And when they brought me here, the detective said I could go to jail. She looked at her mother with eyes full of despair. Mom, he betrayed me. He used me and left me. And I thought he loved me. Mercedes felt her heart breaking for her daughter. In one day, both of them had tasted the bitterness of betrayal by the men they loved. Mia, listen to me carefully, she said firmly. We're going to find the best lawyer. We'll prove you were deceived. You're going to get out of here, I promise. But we don't have that kind of money. Mia sobbed. Lawyers are so expensive. We'll find it, Mercedes said firmly. I'll sell everything if I have to. Leo squeezed Mia's hand tightly through the bars. Mia, I'll be here. Every day. We'll get through this together. The girl looked at him through her tears. Leo, will you forgive me for being so blind? You have nothing to be forgiven for, he answered gently. You just trusted the wrong person. When they left the station, it was already dark. Mercedes felt completely drained, like a squeezed lemon. In a single day, her world had turned upside down. What are we going to do? Leo asked. Mercedes stopped by the car and looked up at the starry sky. Somewhere out there, in that suburban house, Julio was having dinner with his second family. Somewhere, Juan was celebrating having escaped responsibility. And her daughter was sitting in a cell. We're going to fight, she said firmly. And we're going to win. Mercedes didn't sleep a wink all night. She lay in the empty bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events over and over in her mind. Julio with his other family, Mia in a jail cell, a future that had crumbled like a house of cards. By morning, she had made a decision. She needed to find money for a lawyer. 100,000. An enormous sum for a family psychologist, but she would find it, even if she had to sell the house. At 7 in the morning, Mercedes started making calls. First to her sister, Isabel. "Mercedes, darling, I would love to help, but we're going through a business crisis right now," her sister apologized. "Maybe in 6 months. Then to her mother's brother, Don Alberto. "Sweetheart, 100,000 is a lot. I can manage 15 at most." Family, friends, colleagues, distant relatives all gave the same answer. They sympathized but couldn't help. By noon, Mercedes was sitting at the kitchen table with a phone book, all the crossed-out numbers circled in red. Tears of despair rolled down her cheeks. "I'll have to sell the house," she thought. But even that would take time, appraisals, paperwork, finding a buyer. And Mia was sitting in a cell right now. Just then, the doorbell rang. Mercedes wiped her tears and went to open the door, having no idea who it could be. Standing on the doorstep was a young blonde woman, the same one Mercedes had seen the day before at the suburban house. Beautiful, but with sad eyes and a determined expression. "Senora Herrera?" the stranger asked. "My name is Linda Aguilar. I need to speak with you." Mercedes froze. What could her husband's second wife want from her? And how did she even know? "May I come in?" Linda asked. Without a word, Mercedes led her into the house. They went into the living room and sat across from each other, two women bound together by one man and his lies. "Yesterday, my father, he's a taxi driver and he drove Julio, told me everything," Linda began without preamble. "That Julio has a second wife and a daughter." Mercedes clenched her hands into fists. Hearing it from her rival made it sting even more. 10 years, Linda continued, her voice trembling. "All that time I thought I was building a real family. That our children were growing up with a loving father, not a liar. And I thought I had a husband for 20 years, Mercedes said bitterly. "Turns out, we were both deceived." Linda nodded, sighing. "He lied to both of us like a professional." They sat in silence, studying each other. Mercedes no longer saw a rival in Linda, only another woman who had been deceived. Suddenly, all the emotions that had built up over the past day burst out. Mercedes began to cry, bitterly, desperately, the way one cries when their whole world collapses. "I'm sorry," she sobbed, "I didn't mean to. It's just that, my life has fallen apart. My husband's gone, my daughter's in jail." "In jail?" Linda asked in surprise. "What happened?" Through her tears, Mercedes told her about Mia, about Juan, about the stolen car. About how her daughter had trusted a scoundrel and was now paying for someone else's crime. "She needs a lawyer," Mercedes said. "A good lawyer costs 100,000. I don't have that kind of money. I'll have to sell the house. And Julio? After all, she's his daughter. I don't want to talk to him. He's become a stranger to us. He has another family now." Mercedes lowered her head. There wasn't a trace of reproach in her words. Linda listened carefully, and compassion grew in her eyes. "How old is your daughter?" she asked. 19. "She's still just a child, really. Fell in love with a handsome guy and believed everything he said." "Like us," Linda said quietly. "Yes, like us." They sat in silence, each lost in her own thoughts. Mercedes wiped away her tears, and Linda gazed thoughtfully out the window. "You know," Linda said finally, "yesterday I made a decision. I'm filing for divorce. It's time Julio stopped playing with people's lives without consequences." "What will you tell the children?" Linda sighed heavily. "The truth. That their father wasn't the man he pretended to be. They have the right to know." "I'm so sorry things turned out this way," Mercedes said. "We both suffered," Linda agreed. "But now we know the truth. And that's something. It's a chance to start over." Linda stood up, preparing to leave. Senora Herrera, I'll be thinking about your daughter. I hope everything turns out for the best. Thank you for coming, Mercedes said. Strangely, I feel a bit lighter now. At least I know I'm not alone in this. After Linda left, Mercedes sat for a long time in silence. The meeting with her rival had turned out nothing like she had expected. Instead of anger and accusations, there was understanding and the shared sympathy of two women deceived by the same man. But the problem of the money for the lawyer still loomed large. Mercedes picked up her phone and started looking up real estate agents' numbers. If she had to sell the house to save her daughter, she would do it. 2 hours after Linda had left, Mercedes was sitting with her phone in hand, dialing the number of a real estate agency when she heard the familiar sound of keys in the lock. Her heart skipped a beat. Julio? He entered the house briskly, his face dark and determined. Mercedes stood up from the couch, instinctively tense. Why didn't you tell me? He attacked immediately, without even greeting her. Tell you what? Mercedes asked coldly, though she knew exactly what he meant. About Mia. About her being arrested. Mercedes looked at him in astonishment. The audacity of this man knew no bounds. Why do you care? She said in an icy tone. You have your own family. Take your problems to them. Julio froze, something like fear flickering in his eyes. Mercedes, what are you talking about? About Linda. About the children. About the house in the suburbs. She pronounced each word deliberately, watching his face change. About your real life, the one you hid from me for years. Julio turned pale but quickly regained his composure. Fine, so you know. But that doesn't change the fact that Mia is my daughter. I have a right to know what's happening to her. Your daughter? Mercedes laughed, but it was a bitter, almost hysterical laugh. When was the last time you cared about her? When was the last time you asked how she was doing in school, who her friends were, what she dreamed about? I work, I provide for the family. Which one? Mercedes exploded. You didn't care about us, Julio. Mia sought attention from the first guy who came along because her father wasn't there. You were busy building another nest. Don't you dare talk like that. Julio shouted, the rage he had bottled up finally breaking free. I've always been a good father. A good father? Mercedes stepped right up to him, her eyes blazing with fury. A good father doesn't live a double life. A good father doesn't lie to his daughter every day. A good father doesn't start a second family and forget about the first. I never forgot about anyone. I tried to balance it all. Balance it? Mercedes's voice cracked. You tried to sit on 2 chairs at once. And when your daughter got into trouble, where were you? Playing happy family with Linda. Julio stood there, fists clenched, breathing heavily. In his eyes was the anger of a man caught red-handed. And now what? He asked. What do you want me to say? Nothing. Mercedes shouted. Absolutely nothing. We'll manage without you. But the money for the lawyer. We'll find it. I'll sell the house if I have to. You can't sell the house. It's ours, joint property. Ours? Mercedes laughed bitterly. You have another house, Julio. Go there. Julio paced the room, running a hand through his hair nervously. Then he stopped and looked at her with cold anger. You know what, Mercedes? You made this choice yourself. You decided not to tell me about Mia's problems. You chose pride over help. So don't blame me for what's happening to Mia. His words struck harder than a slap. Mercedes felt something inside her tear apart. Get out, she whispered. Get out of this house and never come back. Gladly, Julio replied coldly. He turned and headed for the door. A moment later, it slammed shut. Mercedes was left alone in the silence, a silence so tense it rang in her ears. She sank onto the couch and cried. Cried out of helplessness, anger, and pain. 20 years of life with this man, and he was capable of shifting the blame for his own indifference onto her. You made the choice yourself, his cruel words echoed in her mind. What choice? The choice not to humiliate herself in front of a husband who had betrayed them? The choice not to ask for help from a man who had lived a double life for years? Gradually, the tears dried up, giving way to cold resolve. Mercedes picked up the phone and dialed the number of a real estate agency. Good afternoon, I'd like to discuss selling my house as quickly as possible. Julio had made his choice long ago when he started his second family. Now it was Mercedes's turn to make hers. The realtor arrived an hour later, an elderly man in a formal suit, carrying appraisal documents in his briefcase. Mateo Mendoza had been working in real estate for 30 years and had seen it all, but when Mercedes told him the price she was willing to sell the house for, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Señora Herrera, you do realize that this amount is barely half of the market value, he asked, walking around the living room with a notepad in hand. I understand, Mercedes replied shortly. At that price, the house will sell by tomorrow. But you'll be left out on the street. Mercedes stopped by the window, looking out at the garden she had planted 20 years ago. The rose bushes Julio used to prune every spring. The swing little Mia used to ride. I understand, she repeated quietly. Mateo set down his notepad and looked at her carefully. Señora, if you'll allow a personal question, are you sure about this? Maybe you should wait, find another solution. This is no small thing. A house is just walls, Mercedes said, turning to face him. Life is about the people you love. My daughter is in jail, and I have to save her. Sympathy flickered in the realtor's eyes. I understand. Then I'll list it first thing tomorrow morning. At that price, it'll be snatched up immediately, as they say. I think we'll have a buyer by midday. Good, Mercedes nodded. The sooner, the better. After the realtor left, the house seemed even quieter and emptier. Mercedes slowly made her way upstairs to the bedroom. Tomorrow there would be strangers here. Tomorrow evening she would pack her suitcase and leave, but where? To a rented apartment, in the cheapest neighborhood. She opened the closet and pulled out an old suitcase. Her hands trembled as she began packing. Every item was tied to a memory. Here was the dress she wore on her first date with Julio. She had kept it all these years. A bracelet he had given her on their wedding anniversary. A photo from Mia's graduation. The picture frame slipped from her hands and fell to the floor, the glass shattering. Mercedes dropped to her knees to pick up the shards, and suddenly, she couldn't hold back anymore. Tears poured out of her. She collapsed onto the bed and sobbed, loudly, desperately, like a child. 20 years of life, all the memories, everything she had held dear, all of it was crumbling for the sake of saving her daughter. But was there any other way? Mia was her heart, her soul. Mercedes was willing to sacrifice anything for her. I'm sorry, House, she whispered through her tears. I'm sorry for selling you. But I have to save Mia. I have to. Just then the phone rang. Mercedes wiped her tears and answered without checking the caller ID. Hello? Mercedes, came a familiar voice. It's Linda Aguilar. Good evening, Mercedes replied, trying to hide the fact that she'd been crying. Mercedes, I've been thinking about our conversation all day. About your daughter, about the money for the lawyer. Linda paused. Don't sell the house. What? I'll give you the money for the lawyer. 100,000. Mercedes felt her heart stop. Linda, I can't accept that kind of money. You can and you must. Linda's voice was firm. I have my own business, I make good money. And I believe women should help each other, especially when they've been betrayed by men. Mercedes sat there holding the phone, unable to believe her ears. Salvation had come from the place she least expected. Linda, but we hardly know each other. We know each other, Linda said. We're connected by one man who lied to both of us. There was bitterness in her voice. And we're also connected because we're both mothers. I know exactly how I would feel if my children were in trouble. Tears streamed down Mercedes's cheeks again, but this time they were tears of relief. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. Just save the girl. Linda. I'll come by tomorrow morning with the money. For now, cancel the house sale. Your daughter needs to know there's a home waiting for her. After the call, Mercedes sat in silence for a long time, still holding the phone. Then she slowly dialed Mateo's number. Señor Mendoza? This is Mercedes Herrera. I've changed my mind. I'm not selling the house. Thank God, the realtor replied. She hung up and looked at the shattered picture frame. Carefully, she pulled out the photograph and placed it on the nightstand. Mia smiled from the picture, beautiful, happy, full of faith in the future. Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart, Mercedes thought. And for the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. The day of the trial arrived. Mercedes woke up at 5 in the morning and couldn't fall back asleep. She lay in bed, listening to the sound of the rain outside the window, feeling her heart pounding with anxiety. Today, Mia's fate would be decided. At 8 o'clock, they met in front of the courthouse, Mercedes, Leo, and the lawyer they had hired, Ramon Castillo. Mia was brought from the detention center in a prison transport van. When they let her out in handcuffs, Mercedes barely held back her tears. Mia was pale as a sheet, gaunt, but there was a spark of determination in her eyes. Her time in confinement had changed her, the childish naivety was gone, replaced by an adult seriousness. Mom, Mia said quietly when the guard removed her handcuffs. Everything will be fine, sweetheart, Mercedes whispered, hugging her. Today you're coming home. Leo stood nearby, pale with anxiety. Throughout this whole ordeal, he hadn't missed a single visit with Mia, bringing her books, letters, and moral support. Now he took her hand. I'm right here. No matter what happens. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, curious onlookers, relatives of other defendants. Mercedes sat in the front row, nervously twisting her handbag in her hands. Judge Estrada, an elderly woman with silver hair, entered the courtroom promptly at 9. Everyone rose. The case of Mia Herrera, charged with vehicle theft, is now in session, she announced. Will the defendant please stand? Mia stood, gripping the back of her chair. Her legs were trembling. The prosecutor, a young man in a strict suit, read out the charges. His words sounded like a sentence: premeditated theft of a high-value vehicle, repeat offender behavior. Then it was lawyer Castillo's turn to speak. He spoke calmly but persuasively. Your Honor, before you stands a 19-year-old girl who became the victim of psychological manipulation. Mia Herrera did not plan the crime. She was deceived by Juan Morales, who exploited her trust and love. He presented witnesses, Juan's younger brother, Carlos, who testified about his brother's plans. A neighbor who overheard Juan pressuring Mia into shady dealings. A psychologist who explained the mechanisms of influence on young people. Leo testified as a witness. I've known Mia since childhood. She was never prone to crime. Juan changed her in just a few months, turned her into someone else. Then Mia herself was given the floor. She stood up, squared her shoulders, and spoke in a trembling but steady voice. Your Honor, I'm not trying to avoid responsibility. I was in the stolen car. I tried to run from the police. I was naive, and I regret it. But I can say this will never happen again. She spoke in detail about her relationship with Juan, about how he seemed like a key to a world of romance and adventure. Yes, I was a foolish, love-struck girl, Mia concluded. I trusted someone who turned out to be a liar. But this has taught me the most important lesson: I must take responsibility for my actions. I don't need any more adventures like that. Mercedes wiped away her tears. Her little girl was speaking like a grown woman. The court recessed for deliberation. Half an hour felt like an eternity. Mercedes paced the hallway. Leo sat with his head bowed. Mia stared silently out the window. Finally, the judge returned. Everyone stood. The court finds the defendant, Mia Herrera, guilty of vehicle theft under mitigating circumstances, she began. Considering the defendant's youth, lack of prior offenses, sincere remorse, and evidence of psychological manipulation, the court sentences her to 1 year of community service with 20% of her earnings to be paid as restitution to the victim. Mercedes's heart steadied. Community service, not prison. The sentence takes effect immediately. The defendant is released from custody, the judge continued. The courtroom erupted in applause. Mia collapsed into a chair, covering her face with her hands. Leo stepped forward and hugged her, not bothering to hide his tears. Mercedes rushed to her daughter as well. "It's over, sweetheart," she whispered, holding Mia close. "You're free." They left the courthouse in the rain, but no one paid it any attention. What mattered was that they were together again. At the entrance, Julio was waiting. He stood under an umbrella, dressed in an expensive coat, looking awkward. "Mia," he called as they walked past. The girl stopped and looked at her father. There was no joy or anger in her eyes, only exhaustion. She already knew about her father's second family. Mercedes had decided that Mia deserved the truth. She hadn't blamed Julio, she simply told her daughter how it was. Mia had been shocked, but the support of her mother and Leo had helped her cope with the brutal reality. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. "I'm glad everything turned out well." "So am I." "Thank you." The conversation ended there. Mia took Leo's arm and walked toward the car. Julio remained standing with Mercedes. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. Mercedes nodded to Leo. "Wait for me in the car, please." They were left alone under the courthouse awning. Rain drummed on the roof, people hurried past, but they stood still, noticing no one. "Mercedes," Julio began, "I want to apologize. For everything. For the lies, for the betrayal, for not being there when you needed me. For not helping Mia. For my last words. They were cruel." She looked at him silently. The man's face showed genuine remorse. "I behaved like a scoundrel. I created a second family, lied to you for years. And when Mia got into trouble, all I thought about was myself." He lowered his eyes. "Forgive me. Please. If you can." Mercedes remained silent. Then she said quietly, "I forgive you, Julio. Not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to carry resentment in my heart. Life is too short for hatred." He looked up at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "But that doesn't mean we're going back to the past," Mercedes continued. "Our marriage is over. You can see Mia if she wants. You can support her financially. But you won't see me again. This is the end of us." Julio nodded. "I understand. You deserve better than what I could give you. Goodbye, Julio." She turned and walked toward the car without looking back. 20 years of marriage ended there, in the rain outside the courthouse. But it wasn't an ending, it was a liberation. Ahead waited a new life. An honest life, without lies and betrayal. Mercedes got into the car and hugged her daughter. "Now, let's go home," she said, feeling an incredible lightness. The day after the trial, Mia woke up in her own bed for the first time in many weeks. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, birds were singing in the garden, everything seemed unrealistically beautiful after the grim walls of the cell. She went downstairs to the kitchen, where Mercedes was already making breakfast. Her mother looked calm, peaceful, as if a heavy burden had finally lifted from her shoulders. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mercedes smiled. "How did you sleep?" "Wonderfully," Mia said, hugging her mother. "Mom, I'm so grateful to you for everything." "Hush," Mercedes stroked her hair. "We're family. And family always supports each other." The doorbell rang. Leo was standing on the doorstep with a bouquet of white roses and a slightly embarrassed smile. "Good morning," he said. "I thought we should celebrate your release." Mia took the flowers, but suddenly her face clouded. "Leo, what about Juan? Was he caught?" Leo exchanged a glance with Mercedes and nodded. "Yes, he was arrested the day before yesterday. But not for stealing the car." "For what?" "For drugs," Leo said quietly. "They found a large quantity of cocaine during a search. Turns out he wasn't just stealing cars, he was a courier for a drug cartel." Mia turned pale as a sheet. The roses slipped from her hands. "Drugs," she whispered. "Oh my God. That means I could have." "You didn't know anything," Leo quickly said, grabbing her shoulders. "Mia, you were just a girl in love. But I could have been an accomplice to drug trafficking." Mia sobbed. "If it weren't for you, for Mom, I would have ruined my life completely." Tears streamed down her cheeks, and all the pain of the past months broke free. "Leo, forgive me. Forgive me for being so blind. You tried to warn me, and I didn't listen. You were there for me all this time, supporting me, and I didn't even realize." "Mia, hush," Leo said, hugging her as she buried her face in his chest. "It's all over. Juan will never bother you again." "But how could I have been so foolish?" she sobbed. "My best friend was right there, and I went looking for adventure with a criminal." Leo gently pulled her away and looked into her eyes. "Mia, there's something I need to show you. Let's go to the garden." She nodded, wiping her tears. Mercedes tactfully stayed behind in the kitchen, understanding that the two needed to talk alone. Leo led Mia to the old oak tree at the back of the garden, the very one where they used to play as children. He stopped by the tree and pointed to the bark. "Look," he said softly. Mia stepped closer and saw words carved into the bark, "Leo plus Mia equals forever." The letters were old, covered in resin. "When did you do this?" she asked in amazement. "When I was 14, Leo admitted shyly. "The day you said you dreamed of marrying a prince from a fairy tale. I thought I'd never be a prince, but I could be your forever." Mia stared at the inscription, her heart filling with tenderness. 5 years. 5 years this was here, and I never knew. "I was too afraid to tell you," Leo continued. "I didn't want to ruin our friendship. And then Juan came along, and I thought I'd lost my chance." He took her hands in his. "Mia, I've always loved you. From the day we met in the sandbox. You were the most beautiful, the smartest, the kindest girl in the world. And you still are." Tears streamed down Mia's cheeks again, but this time they were tears of happiness. "Leo, I'm sorry, I was so blind. It's not your fault. I should have told you earlier." Leo led her toward the rose bushes, which were in full bloom. The air was filled with the sweet scent of roses, and bees buzzed softly among the petals. There, among the flowers Mercedes had planted to honor her daughter's birth, Leo dropped to one knee. "Mia Herrera," he said solemnly, "I want to be your protector, your friend, your husband for life. Will you marry me?" He pulled a simple yet elegant ring with a small diamond from his pocket. "This was my grandmother's ring," he explained. "She left it for my future wife. I always imagined it would be you." Mia looked at him through her tears. This kind, faithful, loving man had waited for her all his life, until she was ready, until she had grown enough to see him. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." Leo slipped the ring onto her finger and stood up. They embraced among the roses, and Mia felt she had finally found her home, in the arms of someone who loved her just as she was. That evening, Mercedes threw an impromptu celebration. She set a table in the garden, lit candles, and prepared Mia's favorite dishes. By 7 o'clock, the guests began to arrive. First came Linda with her children, 8-year-old Pablo and 6-year-old Sofia. The kids were shy at first, but Mia quickly won them over, telling them stories and showing them around the garden. How much Pablo and Sofia resemble their father, Mercedes said quietly to Linda, watching the children play with Mia. Yes, Linda agreed. But I hope they take after me in character. Leo's parents, Miguel and Concepcion, arrived. Concepcion cried tears of joy as she hugged Mia. I always knew you two would get married. Ever since you were little. Mercedes had also invited a few neighbors, colleagues, and old family friends. The garden filled with laughter and conversation. What should we toast to? Miguel asked, raising his glass of wine. To new beginnings, said Mercedes. Sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what truly matters. To the truth that sets you free, Linda added. To true love that's always been there, said Leo, looking at Mia. To second chances, Mia whispered. And to the people who believe in us, even when we lose ourselves. They clinked glasses under the starry sky, and it seemed as if fate itself was blessing this new union, not just between Leo and Mia, but between two families who had learned to forgive and to support each other. Little Sofia ran up to Mia and tugged at her dress. Are you our sister now? She asked. Mia picked her up and smiled. Of course, little one. Now we're one big, happy family. And it was true. From the wreckage of broken marriages and shattered illusions, something new and strong had grown, built on honesty and mutual support. Mia and Leo's wedding took place in the same garden where he had proposed to her. The bride was radiant in a simple white dress that Mercedes had sewn herself. The groom couldn't take his eyes off her. Do you, Mia, take Leo as your husband? The priest asked. I do, Mia answered clearly. And I promise to cherish true love and never again seek what I already have. After the ceremony, everyone gathered around a large table. Mercedes raised her glass for a toast. Dear children, you have shown us all that true love doesn't shout about itself loudly. It simply exists. Right beside you. Every day. Be happy. By the end of the evening, Mercedes stood by the rose bushes, watching the couples dance. Suddenly, a familiar figure approached, the old gypsy woman. Well, Senora, the old woman smiled, the tower fell, just as I told you. But look at what has grown in its place. Mercedes nodded. You were right. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find true happiness. If you enjoyed the story, please support it with a like and comment.